Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Friends of Mortgage Heroes. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode today. As most of you in the real estate and mortgage community have found out recently, we lost someone who we really care about, Xavier Zamarron, a day after Thanksgiving this year. So we've had a lot of conversations with people, a lot of text messages, a lot of DMs. I know a lot of people are really grieving the loss of Xavier, the Cowboy Hat Guy, who brought life and energy to every room that he stepped into. And at the same time, that has kind of brought light to the surface, even more so than normal, the importance of veteran suicide prevention and trying to reach the people that have served us in a desperate time that they may be going through. And I know that that's not always easy to do, and it's not always easy to spot. So today, I've invited someone who I met recently into the studio to do a special conversation for not only myself and my team, but also those of you watching who during this holiday season may be unaware of how you could help, how you can reach out, maybe what you could say or do to help support the service members in your life that you love and care about. And so today I want to welcome to the studio Ashley Camac from Zero8Hundred. And thank you for coming to the studio to have this conversation with me today.
Thank you for having me. And I'm really sorry that Xavier's family is going through this. And I look forward to having this conversation so that if anybody's listening or knows somebody who is struggling right now this time of year or any time of year, that they know where there's resources to get assistance for themselves and the families who are helping through those crises. So I just, in honor of Xavier, I think this conversation, is warranted.
Yeah, and there's some people in my personal circle that know that just a week and a half prior to that, we had an extended family member who had also taken his life out of town. And so at least for our little inner circle, that's two in a matter of just a couple weeks. And so it's devastating. But I want to share something that happened that was very timely. The day that I learned about our extended family member, earlier that day, another friend of mine at a business event had stood and said, this is the time of year to check in on your family that's lost someone recently. If they've lost a spouse, they've lost a sibling, they've lost a son or daughter. During the holidays, it's a very difficult time for people because they associate Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's with we gather as a family, we reach out to our family, we talk and reconnect if we don't see each other or live in the same space. And the same day he said that is when we got the phone call that this other suicide had happened that same morning. So the timing was not lost on me. And then, of course, the news of Xavier following that just a couple days later. It's been an important subject and it's been kind of somber around here a little bit. So thank you for spending time with us today. I know you guys are always doing important work, but I would like to talk about the suicide prevention part first. So if we could dive right into, what are the needs for people who don't know about what's happening in the veteran suicidality conversation. Please share what is happening that some people may not know about with our veteran community and the risk of suicidality.
Yeah, I think I'll first touch on, just to comment on what you were saying. This is a time of year where I think whoever had said that at that event, very valid. Whether it's veterans, civilians, our neighbors, when you look at the holiday season, there's just stress factors, right? It's a lot of family. It's a lot of interaction. Everybody's a different type of person. Everybody has a different personality. So whatever their history is, whatever has gone on, whatever their life has been about, their experiences they had, whether they were a veteran and they've served in places that we could never understand, or they've just had hardships in life that we all tend to have, how we respond to them are very different because we're all different human beings. And then when the holidays come around, it can start to feel like there's too much. And maybe we can't work through some of those other things that are happening because other things are now kind of compiling on. So I think it was very valid that they said that. And I think it's that time of year, yes, but let's start talking about doing it all the time. I just recently had a conversation where I said, let me challenge people. let me challenge you to go into your workspace, to go into your family circles, to go into an event where you see people that you know and really ask them how they're doing and really check on them. If you have a team of people that you're leading and you think you know your coworker, you think you know that person that you're managing, do you really know them? Do you really take the time to know them? I think we've gotten away a bit from just like, oh, how are you doing? And then the person's like, I'm good. And you're like, okay. And then you kind of walk away. But we got to get to a point where we start to know people on a real people level so that we can start to see through when people aren't doing so well. Yeah. When they just simply answer us and say, yeah, I'm good. And then you're like, okay. And then walk away. You're like, wait a minute, that didn't sound like the best I'm good. And so let me dive a little deeper, maybe not push as much as I should, but maybe if it feels like I should push a little, I do. And so I think that comes to like people. In the veteran space, I think what we see is that there's this constant note of how many suicides does a veteran take, like veteran population take a day. And that's a really hard number to really firm out. The counties are trying to wrap their heads around it, and they're trying to report into things like in our area, the San Diego Suicide Prevention Council will track what those numbers are on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month, and then of course throughout the year. One of the most recent studies, because data is always behind a few years, in 2022, there was over 3,000 veteran suicides across the nation. Wow. That is a huge number. And so when I think about the work, not just Zero8Hundred does, but some of the other people that are in the mental health space, what we do is we design a system where we are doing a basic mental health assessment on a person. And we utilize things like the Columbia Suicide Severity Scale or the PHQ-9, which is a health questionnaire with 9 questions. But where it kind of like pivots to, okay, the person's okay or they're not, is when they answer this one question, which is, do you want to wake up, or have you had thoughts of not wanting to wake up recently, right? It's not necessarily direct to, do you want to hurt yourself today or somebody else, right? It's what kind of thoughts have you been having? And so as they start to answer these questions, you start to realize like, hey, where can I pivot services? How can I connect them in? And so essentially, we could say everybody can give that PHQ-9. Everybody can ask these questions, right? But when you look at the veteran spacing, you look how there was, 22 suicides a day. That was a thing that was out there. And then it was like, wait, the number's lowering. Wait, the number's going higher. We do still see a trend that it's fairly high. What we're seeing is a trend that female suicides are rising. And then there's, some conversation around, well, what demographic, what age group, and there's a lot of different data points out there. But the fact is we had over 3,000 suicides in 1 year in this nation from our veterans who have served our country. Mm-hmm. So what can we do differently? I think for Zero8Hundred, one of the things we recently did in the last year is we partnered with the Department of VA. And there's other organizations that are starting to do this. And what they decided they needed to do is that they accept it. We can't do this alone. And I think we can all have debates about VA and all the things, right? But the reality is when an organization, whether it's that large or it's small like Zero8Hundred, says, I cannot do this alone, I need to partner, I need to collaborate because the other person matters that much, we can get stuff done. And so in that partnership is actually in honor of a young veteran who took his life at 25 years old. And so these partners are across the nation doing these baseline mental health assessments and getting these veterans connected to services in and outside the VA. So there's a lot being done, but just to touch on what you were just asking, that's what we're seeing is we're seeing a shift in how services are delivered out of the VA. We're seeing a number rise and then sometimes kind of stays steady and it fluctuates, and that's just data in itself. But we're seeing community organizations who want to step up and see what we can do to kind of, complement what services are happening in these larger entities.
I'm really glad to hear that. And I know you're being very polite in that, when you tell people, yeah, you just go to the VA, call the VA. Like, it's easy to say that.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of times from my personal experience, I know this is not everyone's experience. When I talk with people about that, it's been challenging for them in certain ways. So it's it's a little bit of a relief to hear that finally there's some partnerships forging where these local communities can be associated directly with the VA for those, like, let's say, first touch services where someone is calling you and you're that front line versus them calling the VA first. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And then you were referring to this being done in honor of someone else, right? Are you referring to the SSG Fox Grant?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that real quick? Because that seems like that's kind of opened up broader services for the type of thing that people are going through right now with suicide and this time of year. So let's talk about the Fox Grant for a second.
So Staff Sergeant Gordon Parker Fox died by suicide on July 21st, 2020. So in honor of him and his legacy with the military, at 25 years old, the VA has created a grant in his name. Essentially, Congress has established this grant. And what it is to do community care, connective work between the local boots on the ground, small organizations, partnering them in areas across the nation directly with VA services. When you think an entry point of somebody coming out of service comes into a 0-800 or a similar model across the nation, they're walking in because of a relationship, right? Somebody said, hey, they can probably help you with something. So the VA is recognizing within that grant system that those entry points happen. The VA being a bigger system with obviously lots more money than these local organizations have and access to resources that maybe these local organizations cannot have access to. They've recognized, like, we have to bridge this gap of services so that that person can get what they need. What happens in the Staff Sergeant Fox program really is it starts with a law. It's a federal program. So it starts where Congress has passed a bill. Within that bill, and the law within this one is called the Hannon Act of 2019. And so within that, it mandates that the VA is going to respond and be allowed to work with those organizations. So like the language within the law is very specific. But what it does is it opens up the agency that gets the grant to be able to facilitate funding support and direct referral services back into the VA. And if that veteran's like, you know what, I don't want to be at the VA. They have every right to say, I don't want to be there. And the VA, through that law and through that grant, will pay for the community care and the psychiatric support that service member and veteran might need. And I say service member because that particular grant within the VA is pretty much the first in its kind to offer support back to active duty who are still in uniform.
Got it. So it's not just veterans, it's active duty as well. Wow.
It really is. So when we looked at it, I was reviewing this grant going, is this something we want to get connected to? Because we weren't federally funded at that point. And it had nothing to do with money. It was more like, okay, our services are so in line with what this program guide says that we're not going to build this plane as we go. We're going to institute our programming and maybe get some funding support towards it. But what we recognized very fast is that those that we're serving under that law can get access to things they're not going to be aware they can get access to. And so those things can include financial support with legal services, child care services, basic needs, housing, like the list goes on. But when it comes to doing a baseline mental health assessment on somebody, and then they score a certain number and they are ready for services and they accept that they need services, this is going to help expedite those services. And so it's a pilot program and it's not perfect, to your point. But if we can get smart in communities and give the feedback back to the VA as we do, and we're very much immersed in with that all year round, not just here's the data, go. I mean, we're talking to them monthly. We go out to conferences twice a year. We need to give the feedback back and say what's working and what's not, because we're talking about people's lives. And so we're responding to it, but not everybody knows that response is out there.
Well, that's, that was part of the sense of the urgency in my voice when I called the other day. It's like I was, I had reached out earlier, like, hey, we should eventually have this conversation. It would be helpful for our veteran community. And then these suicides happen. I'm like, we need to do this now. So it was, there was definitely a greater sense of urgency over the last couple of days around this. But I think you're right.
Most people. If I may interrupt you.
Sure.
My reaction when you called, I was like, are you okay?
Yeah.
You know, and meaning that, because one is too many. Just one, right? And we just told you the veteran number, right?
Yeah.
The national suicide number is much higher, right? So veteran or not, if you're listening, right? One is too many.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I was like, are you okay? And then after you said, yes, I'm doing okay. Like you're processing, I'm sure. And like you're responding to somebody saying, are you okay? And you're like, yes. And deep down, I'm probably thinking, no, he's not, right? Because you're a human and you need time to process it, right? But you also have a business to run and family members to support, your kids, how they're feeling. You're going to put them first, right? But then I asked you a question next, which is your team okay?
Yeah.
Right? Because your team is affected by it. And so I have to say, like, I have created a system within my business. My team are social workers who deal with this every day. And so I want to be sure that they can put their head down at night after dealing with these very hard conversations. And so I want to be sure that the structure that's in place at 0800 responds to me being able to say to them, are you okay? And then when they say yes, and then I say, okay, but what about the team? Right? That we have layers of people that can come in that are outside of my team, that are third party connections to us that we fund separately outside VA funding. That has nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
And that they can get debriefed. Yeah. And whether it's just that day, if it's a group setting, if it's individual, if it's a month from now, because, hey, we've had one too many. There are times in our office where our veterans are not okay. It's a very powerful statement, right? And I said this when I was at an event yesterday, sometimes our veterans are not okay. And our veterans go through things that the civilian population might never understand. They cannot unsee and unhear what they've been through, the war zones that they might have been a part of, the very arduous duties and challenging spaces that they've had to respond to. That's not to compare to a civilian's experience in life that they might have had hardships. These are very different things. But if we're talking about the veteran population and we're sending them to war and we're training them to kill, they might not be okay downstream.
Yeah, and
right.
I think the expectation is, and I know this perspective is changing, but I think the expectation that when talking to other people, the expectation is, yeah, we're just supposed to be okay. We're operators. Yeah, of course I'm okay. Yeah. Why wouldn't I be okay, right? It's kind of like that doesn't exist. Like that bucket of my life doesn't have a space in my heart or my mind or my soul when it does. And so I think there's been, I've witnessed resistance to even having to answer the question, like, why are you asking me?
But
what do you mean?
That life?
Right? It's this expectation.
Isn't that life though,
okay.
right? Like you have a lot going on in your own life.
Yeah.
In and outside of the military, right? And you're like, I'm good. And you compartmentalize and you prioritize and you get stuff done and you're like, I'm good. And your friends ask and your best friends ask and your family asks and your coworkers ask and they're like, I don't know. It seems fine. But then you add in these really difficult things. And to your earlier point, we go into the holidays. It's not just the holidays too. It's the things that go on in the world. And so if you have a service member who now gets out, and they're a veteran, and maybe they are out a year, maybe they're out 20 years, and something is happening in a part of the world that they might have touched at some point, and you add in the holidays, and you add in politics and finances, and it's a whole bunch of things that come up.
It starts adding up pretty quick.
Right, and starts to feel like you're getting swallowed by it. There's this statement within a lot of research that's like, there's not one single cause to suicide. That's a very true statement. Because most of the time, we don't get to know why they made the final decision they made if they completed the act. So we can assume, oh, well, I heard he had financial issues. Oh, I heard he had relationship issues. Oh, I heard work wasn't going well. Well, you only know what you know in the circle you're in with that person.
Yeah.
You don't know the broader reasons of why. And they might have been struggling with something that's chemically imbalanced and they didn't know, or, so there's so many layers to it. So I think we want to get our heads around, sometimes our veterans are not okay. There's no one single cause to suicide. Holidays, things going on in the world, and just day-to-day stressors can stress out anybody and amplify the thought of suicide in somebody's head. And all we can do as humans is treat other people like humans and say, well, I just don't think you look okay. I know you're telling me, but tell me what's going on in your life. Start to like open-ended question them.
I want to talk about that because I know that some people are closed off. And so what advice can you give to someone like me and to people watching if someone they love and care about is behaving closed off? How do you tell someone that, how would you coach or instruct them to try to prize the wrong word, but like if someone is being standoffish or they're closed off and they kind of don't want to talk about it, there's like this tension. I don't want to press on you too hard, but at the same time, I actually care. Like, how do you tell people, how can we act in that situation?
Yeah.
What should we do?
Well, I think when we're talking about not actively in crisis is one answer, right? So that answer to me is like, okay, let's try and figure out what environment we can be in where that person feels a little bit more relaxed to react to your open-ended questions, right? Because if you're just like, hey, I don't think you're feeling so well. No, I said I was fine. Okay, but I don't think you are. So we're going to go to lunch and we're going to talk about it. It's like you're making somebody open up. And usually people get very protective to that. You know, they don't want to be that vulnerable in that space. So they're going to shut it down.
Yeah.
But if you're like, hey, you know what? You love, bowling or you love baseball. Like, let's go catch a game. And then on the way, it's like, I just want to find out what's going on with this person because it's a process. It's not, I can just solve it today. If a person is actively in crisis, my recommendation is that you get people on the line to help you. Yeah. Right. The 988 line is open 24/7. Organizations like ours are directly connected to them. So even our team will get them on the phone for extra layers. But you're kind of forcing because those are the hard questions you're going to ask. And then you have to be reactive. Does the person have the means to do it? Do they have a timeline? Are they actively going to do it? I've had my team on the phone with somebody and they were slitting their wrist, right? So 911 is called and you're reactively doing something. Yeah. But if you're in a work environment and you just feel like this person is a little off, they're not being themselves and you really want to get down to it, it's like maybe get them out of that space where they don't feel like, because if you're a supervisor, you're like, I have to tell you. Or if you're a friend, it's like, oh, it's your personality, like stop hounding me. But if you just try naturally to find out what's going on, you might be able to respond over time and get them connected outside of you.
So are those some of the signs that we could be looking for as well? Like, they're not acting like themselves. Maybe their behavior's a little bit off from what we call normal or what our observed behavior has been. What are some of the things that we keep our eyes open for, other than just behavior that seems out of the ordinary?
I think,
or is that the primary thing? Yeah,
I think in some research it's that they're pulling away a little bit, but some of the things is like they're not talking about the future, and they're like closed off. It's like, well, I don't care about after Christmas because it's not going to matter to me. Right? Like picking up on that kind of language that they don't really think about a future. And then if you are instituting any of these very direct questions because you are very worried and, there's a lot of research around if you ask somebody, are you looking to take your life? That people used to think, well, that's going to make them take their life, right? If they've decided they're going to take their life, they're going to take their life, right? So if you're trying to ask them because you're worried, that can be really hard for you to say to somebody, right? Well, so it's like you want to pull maybe a professional in or somebody to get to the bottom of it. But, I think there's a very broad answer.
I know some really bold people that will just directly ask that question. I know there's some that may not. How do you tell them to kind of try to elicit an answer, but in a different way, opposed to like, hey, are you going to take your life today?
Right.
That's an extremely direct,
it's very direct
question. And some people will ask it, especially on the proximity of the depth of the relationship. There's people I can call right now and ask that question to. And there's other people I can't ask it that way. Right. How do I ask a question of someone who maybe I don't have that depth with, but I'm still trying to just check in and make sure they're good.
Well, I think you would ask that question, of course, if you're seeing these signs that you're asking, right? And pulling away is not exactly leading to you saying, hey, you haven't been really present. Are you trying to take your life? Like, that doesn't correlate together. I think it's a series of things, and it's you starting to realize, hey, this person is not okay. And I'm just going to flat out ask you because I'm very concerned about you. And you can soften your approach. It doesn't mean you don't still mean it. But like in life, we ask questions we might not want to hear the answer to. I think it's important for people to know that if you're concerned about somebody and you feel like you can't ask those questions, but that's what's come into your mind because of how they're acting, what they're doing, whatever they're presenting with is making you feel that alarmed at that level, you too can get on the phone with 988. They will walk you through it. Right? Because that's the whole entire premise around what that service does, is not just to help that person that's in crisis, to help you if you're in.
Right. If you're in the room with that person or you have them nearby. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, but that's something I want everyone who's watching this to know is like, even if it's you can call 988. If it's someone who you're nearby, who you think needs 988, you can call that number too. They're going to answer. It's 24/7 and it doesn't turn off. So,
and if you can't remember in that moment, that number, it's been ingrained in us since we were children. Call 911.
Yeah.
Because if they believe that's what's happening, they'll push you into 988. So you don't have to remember that. You're not burdening anybody. Somebody who is in that active crisis, I want to touch on this for a second, because if you have never seen a person in active crisis, you don't know what to expect. Right. Unfortunately, I've seen people in active crisis, right? The nature of what we do, personal experiences, just my own, life experiences and work situations. I've seen this, but the hope is that the average person has not. But the part of the messaging today is to have people understand you might feel instantly uncomfortable. This isn't going to be something that you're like, oh, I got this, right? And it's very hard because that person on the other side might not hear you, might not be listening, might be erratic, might not be necessarily wanting to harm you, right? And they might not really want to be harming themselves, but their actions might be a little bit out of the norm.
Like unpredictable.
Right. And you're just kind of like, I don't know what to do. And I've had people that are in active crisis where you're trying to talk to them and it's like they're not even there. So you want to get those services
checked out, right?
Online.
Like they're not making sense about seeing the situation for what it actually is. And
right.
I know I've unfortunately been on the phone with someone before who was saying things completely out of the ordinary and it was a wild departure from the regular interaction and conversation we had. And I'm like, there's something going on right now.
Right.
Like this is way out of bounds, out of normal. And it was a feeling, a sense of being overwhelmed, that compounding effect of all these other things.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, it reached this critical limit. And now all the things this dude's telling me is not even close to the way we normally talk. So that becomes very obvious at that point. Like there's a crisis happening.
Yeah. But I want to also add people may not give any signs.
Yeah. I think that's the lurking thing around the corner. Like, what do we do when we don't see signs? Like, how do you even know if you don't know?
Right. And so yourself and your team, for example, I'm not saying this is happening, but it could be happening where it's like, how did we not see this? How did we not help? Right. Like there's that guilt on this side that we didn't do enough. We didn't listen enough. And we're here today to talk about how you can do more to try and help people who might be in this. But it's important to remember that we're all humans and there might be a chance that that person just didn't share anything whatsoever and that there was nothing else you could do. There's nothing else the mom could do, the dad could do, right? And that's something that they're going to need a lot of long-term support around because that struggle is as real as it gets. Because I know I'm a mom, I have adult children. You want to fix it. You want to know, you think you know. So in the sense that you wouldn't know and you didn't see it, you're going to live with guilt. And if you worked with that person and you're like, they were happy yesterday, right? Back to Sergeant Fox. His mom spoke to a bunch of grantees with this, grant across the nation. And she says how amazingly happy he was. He was the happiest kid. He was the happiest adult, that he walked around and like he was larger than life, like that nobody saw it coming. And I think that's the pivotal moment where they're like in his honor, because people might not say anything. And then we're all still here wrestling with, I should have saw something.
Right. Like
How do I
the
do
surprise
more?
of it is like, wait a minute. Now you retroactively go, wait, did I miss something?
Right.
Did he say or do or something? Or did I miss a comment somewhere where, oh, well, I'm not planning past December. I'm not looking like, but when none of those exist and there is something under the surface, it makes you wonder, gosh, I wonder what was going on that he just didn't have anybody to share with.
Right.
And I was like, sad. It's like a sad thought, but I'm like, what was happening that the people that regularly talked to him, he didn't even feel like he could tell them.
Right.
You know?
But it's kind of that natural sense of like, we as humans like cause and effect.
Yeah.
We need an answer.
Yeah.
And there's not always a definitive answer.
Yeah.
And that's just really hard. So like being here today to say, if you see somebody struggling, of course, right? Get to understand what else is going on. And the challenge I was saying with like, really get to know your people, whoever you're around. Right? We even think we know our kids. We don't know. They become adults. They pull away a little bit. That doesn't mean they're suicidal, right? But we want to know everything because we're the parent, or we want to know everything about our teams because we lead them. And unless we go to lunch and we have one-on-ones and we really get to know people, that will help us more understand when the person might not be feeling so well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It takes time. It's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
But all we can do is try to do better and have these conversations and say, there are resources out there. So if you're in San Diego, the San Diego Suicide Prevention Council has a ton of resources on their website, right? If you want to look at 0-800 for veterans, that's just one entity doing that. A psychiatric facility, a mental health support service, whether it's county, a nonprofit organization, a hospital, like there's a ton of resources out there. Sometimes the disconnect is people don't know there's resources out there.
I was just going to say, like, I think that for those of you who are inside that, I'll say circle for lack of a better explanation, like in that network and circle of support providers for those type of things in town, you all probably know each other or know of each other. Mm-hmm. There's like the ring outside, like we're in business, we're in finance specifically. Okay, so we know all the people in our little ring, and there's not a lot of crossover between what we do and what you guys do, but there's a ton of crossover between what we do and the veteran and active duty space. So there's a lot of realtors we work with that are military, that the loan officers that are military, and a lot of the people in real estate that they either are still active and working on building a career into real estate when they separate, or they're veterans and this is what they do full time. So those overlap really easily for us. It's almost like I feel like there's this triangulation where we need to bring some of that together with what you guys are all doing, because even though we've done this for 20 years, I only know of a handful of groups in town.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's a lot of cross-populating of the mental and emotional and care part of what we do in the service part of town to, the business part of town, at least that I'm aware of. But this has been a wake-up call for us to go, okay, hold on. I know these things exist. Yeah. We need to figure out how we're talking more often, or somehow bring those bridge them together closer, because we can't just live on these separate islands. That's not going to work either.
No, I think on the business side of the house, what I hear a lot of that's good stuff happening is veteran resource groups within businesses. That those are becoming a little bit more popular because you're like, hey, I can connect them to all kinds of resources, right? Fun things, just things that they're a part of because they served our country, and or some of the very tough things that we need to address if somebody is to have resources. We live in kind of a PC world, so we can't just be like, go do this because you have to, right? So it's like we want to welcome that with open arms and say, hey, this town is very philanthropic. There's over 13,000 nonprofits registered in this county. There's somebody out there who can help with something. But these veteran resource groups within actual, companies and businesses have really been able to bring them in their monthly meetings and really start to expand and have somebody in that group who runs a website within your business, if it's a SharePoint or something, where they can tap in and see and then have conversations and talk on podcasts and do all the things that can get these resources in front of them in very unique ways. So I've seen a lot of success with that. I can tell you in the nonprofit space, this conversation is active every day I'm in some of these conversations, in particular with veteran transition services, when they're coming out of service, like how do we then get them connected to all this stuff they might not be aware of so that these things don't happen if they were connected? Because we want to believe if they had the resource, they wouldn't do the things they do. And that's a long laundry list of things, right? But there's active conversations and like, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? We're so geographically dispersed. I mean, you know that in the business you're in. So like, how does the person down in Chula Vista know about a resource that might serve the whole county, but they're up in the north, right? Like, how do we get that to be a thing so that they can get access to something that could really be life-changing in some aspects? So I think the work is happening. And for those that are listening, like if you want to be a part of those active conversations, there's a lot of groups out there, and, you know, it's outside of me. Like I'm just one agency. I cannot do it all, but I try to be very active as a leader to say, here's what our data shows. How can we be active in making sure the landscape is constantly changing and evolving so that people are served the best they can in and outside of us?
Yeah, and I think that even just this conversation today is kind of like the starting point for what I'm already thinking of other ways that we can work together or coordinate efforts together to do communication and promote certain things that are happening. So very preemptively, I'm going to invite you back, but I want to talk way more about what it is you're doing to help support communities and families. But kind of my last question on the suicide prevention part today is, you know, what would you say directly to someone who might find themselves in that position where they're just really at their low?
Yeah.
What would you tell someone who might have been sent this message today? Like
Yeah.
by someone they love who doesn't know how to ask the question, hey, go watch this conversation. I love you, but you need to hear this. What would you maybe say to that person?
I want to share it in a story form, my answer. Because I recently I teach at a university, and I had a student who approached me, and she just kind of like, I had just met her that morning, right? So I didn't know her physically. So I have no way to know if she's a little off or not. I have no way to decide that. And I see other students are leaving, the class is over. She's kind of sitting there. She looks kind of visibly upset, but like not crying or anything like that. And so she was like, hey, can I talk to you? And there was like two more people still over there talking. And I just had this feeling in my gut. And I want to tell people, trust your gut, that I needed to get those people out of the room, that it felt like she wanted to have a private conversation. So I think I created instantly a safe space. And whatever I was putting across in my energy that day, she felt like she wanted to say whatever she wanted to say to me. And so this girl is very young. She was like 25 years old. And she told me, I don't want to live anymore. And she just blurted it out. Now that's not going to be everybody's interaction, right? And so she says this to me, and I turn around and I said, okay, can we talk about it? And she was like, yes, and just started crying. And so I asked her, can I take you by your hands? You know, and I was just holding her hands, and I looked her right in her eyes, and I said, I want you to be alive. I do. I don't know if that matters to you. You're telling me. And we just had like a very real moment that I'm just your professor, right? That's it. And you came up to me and you don't seem like you're doing well. And then you share very immediately what's going on. She didn't know about resources. She doesn't know all these things. And you fast forward through the conversations. But in the moment of just taking her by her hands and telling her, I want her here. And then going, I don't want to say above and beyond, because you're just being a human. Once we actively were in crisis mode, we're now on the 988 line. We're doing all the things that we need to do, right? That after the fact, I'm still tracking her, right? Where is she at now? The next, like we're texting, like I want to be sure she's still alive. And so she's a 25-year-old veteran, right, who did one tour and got out, and whatever has happened in her life wasn't for me to decide that day, right? I didn't need to know. All I knew is she didn't want to live anymore, and all I knew is I wanted her to. And that sounds like a very selfish interaction, but I was like, I am going to get her the services she needs. I am going to follow up with her. So to your question, if it's you, say it to whoever will listen. Say it to whoever you feel connected to. If that's a pastor, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a random person that you just interacted with, tell somebody, because a human with empathy is going to respond. And I want them to know, like, you're not alone. And I'm not here to compare, like, oh, okay, you have stuff going on, so do I. I want you to know that people will listen, people will respond to you, and whatever's going on, we can try and get you the help that you need to get through it. And you will be okay. And it could be a long journey ahead of us, you know? And I think, like, interestingly, I just responded and did what I felt like I would do if it happened again tomorrow, right? A couple days later, I got a text message from a random number, and come to find out it was her family member who she shared the number with. And they were the long list of how, like, do you know the impact you had on her? I mean, the text would make you just cry.
Wow.
But
Wow.
it's because you humanize the interaction and not, you know, like, oh, well, let me see what I can connect to. Like, I want everybody to know that people will show up. They will be people, and they will be empathetic, and they might not understand what you're going through, and they might never understand what you've been through, but they want to see you here.
I think sometimes I've witnessed people, be so willing to be that person for someone else, but they have a hard time letting someone else be that person for them.
Yeah.
And there's this, like, imbalance we have in, like, oh yeah, I would love to be a support person. I'd love to care on this person, but oh man, I have such a hard time accepting that for me.
Yeah.
I have like this self-worth imbalance. Your life is so important. Oh, mine's not that important. And sometimes it's hard to see that, but in a situation where someone is overtly saying that, you can see it right away. Like, oh, whoa, hold on. There's this real big imbalance here. Thank you for sharing that story, by the way.
And just that interaction might not feel comfortable. So to the person who might be responding to that person that we've said somebody will listen, it might not feel so comfortable because you know the enormity behind it.
Yeah.
But that person is being so vulnerable with you that the advice is to let them keep talking, right? Let them let it out. And you, to know that you might not have every single answer, but you're going to tell them, together, we're going to find the answer. And the 988 line, it's 24/7. Right? Ashley Camac, I can't be 24/7. I am a human, right? I'm going to fall asleep at some point, even if I do say I work 24/7. So it's not expected of any one agency, right? But the 988 and the 911s of the world, that's open and staffed 24/7, any day of the week, any holiday. Like, get the support you need to help that person who we just told, you know, because let us tell you, we're going to bring in an army to help you.
I love that. And I know we've mentioned it several times today on the program, but if you yourself need help right now, you can call 988. If you are with somebody or in connection with somebody who needs help right away, you can call 988. If you can't remember 988, you can call 911 like you would normally. And then, Ashley, I do need to bring you back to talk about the larger spectrum of services you guys are offering for Zero8Hundred. But I appreciate you letting me have a focused conversation today about veteran suicide prevention. Thank you for spending the time. I think it's really important that we bridge that gap between the things that we do in the business community and in the public and even in social space with some more awareness of what services are available to people who are going through things. And maybe I'll even admit, maybe it's just that I am lacking in awareness of this. There's probably plenty of people around me that know a lot more of these resources, and maybe it's just me that needs to know some more. But if it's not just me and it's you watching too, and maybe you don't know about resources in the community, that's fine. Let's figure it out from where we're at now and how we can hungry hippo some more of these groups together and bring them all in, and let's get a little tighter circle so we can provide the right services to people who are in need.
Well, we're better together.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. If it's okay, I'd like to put the contact information in the description box for Zero8Hundred. You'll also find the number for 988 below as well. And if you need help, please reach out and get the help that is available to you. Ashley, any parting words for today?
Just thank you for opening the conversation with the community, and, to everything you said. Please reach out if you or anybody you know needs help, 988, and these resources are here for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ashley, for coming by the show today. I know this is kind of more of like an urgent emergency broadcast kind of deal. So thank you for being swift on your feet to get here as well. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for sharing this with someone you know, trust, and love. And I hope that this holiday season can be one that's memorable for all the right ways for you this year. And if you need help, please reach out. You are not alone. Thank you for watching.